Okay, so I'm gonna record this intro now so that it can be included in all of my future videos. What I say, unless I am reading scripture or directly quoting a prophet, is my opinion and my opinion alone. I might follow the archaeological evidence or the science that exists, but it is mine and it is my opinion. It's not the church's opinion, it's no one else's. It's just mine. So this little clip here will go in front of every other video I make so that people can't say that I'm misrepresenting the church. Okay, so it's been a little while since I've posted. I'm sorry guys, I've been super busy and nothing has really come to my mind to post about. However, I do now have some things to discuss and talk about. So, we'll start off with number one. The first thing I wanted to talk about, the very first thing I wanted to discuss is Genesis and the book of Moses. So, I've heard in several Come Follow Me's that it is strictly a vision, an allegorical or temple story. It's not necessarily historical. And while the temple story follows it, it's absolutely 100% historical. We just see a little of both within, or we see all of both in the accounts when they're put together. We see both the historical and we also see the symbolical. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. I will the next thing I wanted to talk about was just kind of the world situation that we're currently in. We're in this situation because of ourselves, because we're stupid, and because society as a whole, not individual people, not everyone individually is stupid, but because society as a whole is stupid and has rejected God. But that doesn't mean that society can't find itself. It also doesn't mean that if society finds itself, that everything's going to be corrected, right? Like, not how that works. So, the only way to correct this situation that we're in is to turn back towards God. And I like something that Midnight Mormons said on their live podcast. And that was that we need to reject the labels. Labels are harmful and hurtful. Always have been, always will be. They generally label what's bad about us, or what society deems as bad about us. So, for example, one of the labels I have is that I'm a misfit. I don't generally fit in anywhere. That's a label. That's not okay. So, I liked their idea. And I'm gonna suggest this to anyone who watches my channel. Let's all go out and we'll just tell everybody, hey, you're a child of God and you're loved. That's right. Let's just tell everyone, you're a child of God and you're loved. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's what I'm going to start referring to people as. When I see someone on the street, whether they're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not, I'm going to refer to them as brother or sister. So when they ask me a question for the first time, or when I first meet someone, I'm going to be like, hello brother, how are you? And they're going to look at me like I'm nuts. But you know what? It shows that I love them no matter what. It doesn't matter a label. They're a brother of mine. And they are literally a brother as a child of God to me. So, I'm going to start doing that. Anyone else who wants to, you can thank the suggestion from Midnight Mormons for that. Anyway, I will talk to you all later. It'll probably be on the same post. This post will probably end up being fairly long because I also want to talk about Exodus, which is what I'm reading right now, and I'm currently reading it in the Joseph Smith translation of the Bible. And I also want to talk about some other stuff. But it'll probably be in the same post. It'll probably be later. So I will talk to you later. And I love you, brothers and sisters. Alright, sorry, I just got off shift, so here's what's going on. So, there was more in the last video that I wanted to talk to you guys about. And it deals with the temple and the temple site. And we're talking the Jerusalem temple. Like, everyone believes that it was on the Temple Mount. But that makes no sense. And here's why. I'm going to give a really good reason why. First off, it's not square. And the Lord required everything to be squared off. Whether it be a rectangle or a square, it had to be squared. 4 90-degree angles when he was giving instructions. This is true for the tabernacle, so going into the temples themselves and the tabernacle itself, pretty small. The building itself is really small, and their courtyard is generally fairly small, not huge. Okay. Let me give you some perspective. And this is why I'm making the video, or this extension of the video. I want to give you guys some perspective on how big the area that the temple was built on was. Because because it was not big at all. Okay, so the Temple Mount itself, going on the two smaller sizes. So the two smallest sizes, right, is 1,530 feet by 910 feet. And that's the two smaller sizes. The other two sizes are larger by quite a bit. One being 1540 or 1548, and the other being 1076. Okay, so just the two smaller sizes, right? Herod's biggest temple courtyard, by the only creditable source, that being Josephus of the 1st century, right? The historian of the 1st century, that he recorded that Herod's temple, at its biggest surrounding wall, was 1 stadia by 1 stadia. Each wall of the 4 walls was 1 stadia long, right? And that's the bigger of the two sizes within the stadia measurements, right? The other one's 580. So they're not sure which. Either way, the biggest area of Herod's temple was 660 by 660. That is less than half of the shortest of the long walls of the Temple Mount. Okay? That's tiny. And that's the outer wall that had Herod's, that by Josephus's description had Herod's stables where the sacrificial animals were kept, right? That's obviously not the temple courtyard, and that's not the women's courtyard. That surrounded all of it. Okay? 660 by 660. That's way smaller than the Temple Mount. Okay? And then we have Solomon's temple, which was the original temple that Herod rebuilt, and then expanded on, right? And its total outermost courtyard space was 440, or it was 450 by 450. 450 feet by 450 feet. You gotta understand how small these buildings were. They were not big. Herod's temple, in and of itself, was only 90 feet long. And it was only 30 feet wide. It wasn't a big building. Right? This was a small building. In a small courtyard that encompassed all that Herod built and all that Solomon built. Right? And then to put it into even better perspective, okay, the tabernacle was in a 250 by 250 foot courtyard. And the tabernacle itself was 150 feet by 75 feet. Again, not big. Little tiny. And the tabernacle was bigger than Solomon's temple. Just to put it into perspective. These were not big buildings. They were little tiny buildings on a little tiny area. Do you know what does fit the description of the Temple Mount and the area of the Temple Mount? The fort. The Roman fort that stood on top of the hill at the highest point. That's what fits that description. Not the temple grounds. The temple grounds were always square. They were never of any shape but square. So if anybody ever asks, that right there, to me, is immutable proof that that's not where the temple stood. The whole reason I'm bringing this up is because I was reading Exodus recently. I'm still reading the Joseph Smith translation of Exodus. Yes, I haven't finished Exodus yet because I read really slow for one, and I don't have a whole lot of time to read, so when I do read, I read a couple of chapters, and that's about it. But I was reading in Exodus, and it's describing, I'm at the point where Moses is currently up in the mountain. And he's come down now, and he's seen the golden calf, and he's destroyed the first set of tablets. Anyway, when he's up in the mountain, and God is speaking to him face to face, right? God gives him an exact measurement of how big his building should be. Right? And well, Solomon didn't follow it exactly. And while Herod just rebuilt Solomon's temple, gave them a women's court because women suddenly weren't worth anything, and expanded the wall, or it made the wall bigger around the area so that it encompassed everything. They didn't follow the Lord's instructions. His tabernacle and his temple were to be a very specific size for them. And while they followed the exact descriptions minus the sizes, sure, and that's fine. But the whole point was the area on top of the Temple Mount is so massive that the temple and the temple grounds themselves would have fit on the Temple Mount twice over, and that's using Herod's temple grounds area. So please remember that to understand history, we have to actually study it, and we can't just go off of what random people have said in the past. And the whole reason that was said to be where the temple was is because the Jews go, well, we don't really know. We don't want to look for it. Didn't want to do the research, and so they failed.
they've selected the wrong spot to be the temple, and it's causing all sorts of turmoil and strife between the Islamic community and the Jewish community. And it doesn't even have to. Because guess what? There's a 600 by 600 foot location that is empty space at the top of the city of David, just south of the Temple Mount. Do you know what else is there? Directly beneath that point, a living spring that continues to flow to this day. And you know what? They've found the original exit, and it's right at the top of that area. And yes, it's died since then, and now flows out side tunnels that have been dug into this hillside. But there's a literal living spring right there, which would have put a living spring inside the temple. Guess what's not on the top of the Temple Mount? No living spring. And guess what's inside the Temple of Solomon? A living spring. Oh my goodness. Just saying. Alright, brothers and sisters, I love you. I will be posting this either today, which is Wednesday, or possibly tomorrow, which is Thursday, along with my previous recorded video. Let me know what you think. Give me some feedback. Talk to you later. Bye.